Hey friends, welcome to Blooming Wand, your home for grounded spiritual content. I'm Emily O'Neill, evidential psychic medium, intuitive healer, and coach. And on this episode themed The Flames of May, Kindling Ancestral Wisdom at Beltane, I want to talk about the history of Beltane or May Day. I'm going to offer you a tarot spread to support your self-care and spiritual practice, as well as journal prompts, and just really connect with the shift in the seasons and in the wheel of the year so that we can honor the shifts within ourselves. So, Beltane marks the halfway point between the spring equinox and the summer solstice, and it's traditionally celebrated on May 1st. And for my ancestors across Britain, Scandinavia, Northern Europe, as well as Germany and Eastern Europe, Beltane represented a pivotal moment in the agricultural calendar. It signaled the beginning of summer, when cattle were driven out to summer pastures, and the world bursts into new life and fertility. And I know that I just experienced this because I live in an area where I can watch hawks and eagles and other raptors throughout the year, really, but in particular during spring, I've noticed that the eagles, they chatter a lot more, they court each other, and they're just in general more active. And before I came in to record this episode, I thought it was just two eagles, but then it turned out to be four. And it's a sunny day, and they were playing. They were flying and soaring in the sky, feeling the warmth of the sun and riding the thermals. And they would fly up way high and then they would dive low. And they were kind of like, I don't know, dancing and playing with each other in the sky. And I thought, yep, birds, they tend to be great indicators of when spring is coming, when the sun is going to rise. Just that energy of renewal and vitality. I feel like they sing more, they talk more, they chatter more. And I know that's definitely the case with the eagles because the other morning I woke up to the sound of their chitter chatter and I looked out and there was two eagles and they must have been building a nest because they were carrying sticks and talking to each other, and it seemed like they had some kind of plan in place for what they were doing, and it was really cool. So I do feel like for those of us in the northern hemisphere this time of year, it does feel like a burst of energy comes through. Now, historically, May Day is one of the four major Celtic fire festivals alongside Samhain, we call it Halloween, Imbolc, and Lunasa. Now, in Germanic traditions, this time aligned with something called Walpurgisnacht. I hope I'm saying that right, which was celebrated on April 30th, while Nordic traditions celebrate various spring festivals around this time, often connected to the goddess Freya. And there's even different celebrations in areas like Lithuania and in Slavic regions, which I've just recently made some ancestral connections to those places. And one of the things that I didn't realize, and I learned this from actually watching, I think it was like a travel show or something, but about how in Sweden, May Day is like in some places kind of a big deal. And that just kind of tickled me. I have a grandmother who was born on May 1st, which is Beltane or May Day. Her father's people came right over from Sweden to the Americas. And I've learned just through some talk with people in the family about some of their Swedish traditions. And I don't know if this is in direct relation to what she experienced, my grandmother that is, or not, but my sisters and I, maybe it's because it was grandma's birthday, I don't know, but we liked May Day and we would run to the neighbor's house and like ring their doorbells and leave little bouquets of like dandelion stuff on their doors for May Day. We would also make ourselves flower crowns. We weren't really very good at it, probably because we were using floppy dandelions, but it was just, I remember it being a time where we played outside more, the flowers were blooming, and where we just felt more playful. And I think we see that in nature as well. Now, I thought it might be fun to go over some of the traditional celebrations were that I found that people kind of do around this time of year. or did these things in the past, and maybe some of them still exist today. I think some of them do. So, across Northwest Europe, Beltane was traditionally marked by several distinctive practices. The Beltane fires, this is a big one, which is perhaps the most iconic tradition. This is when communities would extinguish all household fires and relight them from what they called the need fire or the Beltane bonfire, symbolizing purification and renewal. So, you would go put out the fire in your home, you would go to the community need fire with your kindling or whatever, and then go back and relight your home hearth fires from the community fire, which I think is incredibly symbolic and kind of cool. And I feel like I need to come up with a ritual for myself that I can do on May Day, kind of that honors that a little bit, because I feel like I don't know, it really resonates with me. The other one is Maypole dancing. So the maypole is a tall pole decorated with ribbons and flowers, and it represents the symbolic union of masculine and feminine energies. And dancers would weave ribbons around the maypole in intricate patterns, and they would dance around it. And the reality is that the maypole is a phallus, and it's just that vital energy that penetrates the earth and plants the seeds and brings in that growth. And I think that one of the things that I didn't know as a kid, because I used to see pictures of old May Day festivals. I used to work at a local historic society, and I had to categorize and catalog photographs. And I remember coming across a lot of old, like really old images of May Day festivals with the maypole and little kids dancing around the pole. And I would always chuckle because I would wonder if, like, because this is such an ancient tradition, do people really realize what the maypole symbolizes? And I think some people forgot because I've mentioned it to various Blooming Wand community members, and they're like, I didn't know the maypole was a phallus. I'm like, yeah, it is. And by the way, our ancient old and wise ones wouldn't be bashful about that. They wouldn't be like, oh, no, that's, not appropriate or whatever. They would be very comfortable with that. I think we can be comfortable with it too. It's nothing to, I know it's pagan and people are like, have different ideas about that, but really it's just symbolism, right? And symbolism is important. The other thing is flower gathering. So dawn walks to gather May flowers and greenery were common, with people decorating homes and livestock for protection and blessing. This is one of the things that I feel like is so cool. It wasn't just crown yourself, it was crown the animals that are feeding you and nourishing and drape them with wreaths and floral garlands because, right, they're part of the circle of life. They nurture us and we need to nurture them. There was also threshold protection, so rowan branches, flowers, and other protective herbs were placed over doorways to ward off negative influences during this time when the veil was considered thin between worlds. So, you know, I say healed and wise ancestors because there are some maybe energies that are in the unseen realm that maybe we don't want to invite into our homes or things that we want to protect ourselves from. I think that's an old thing for humans. And so I do feel like honoring your home by protecting it with some spiritual practices, whether that's herbs or whatever, I get it. I totally understand it. It's like an intention setting and a boundary setting, which I think is actually a pretty practical thing. Another thing that was really important during this time of year was feasting and community. And above all, Beltane or May Day was a time of coming together, sharing food, and celebrating the promise of summer's abundance. And the reason I'm recording this episode and kind of offering journal prompts and a tarot spread is sort of a way for us to come together virtually. Maybe we can't all celebrate May Day together, but this is a way for me to put something out there in connection with you to know that we're kind of maybe exploring these things together. And I always like to hear from you. If this episode resonates with you, shoot me an email at emily@bloomingwand.com or leave a comment if you're watching on YouTube. So that we can interact and kind of share our experiences and understanding more. I think that's very in the spirit of May Day. Now, learning about the traditional celebrations around Beltane or May Day has been a journey of reconnection with my healed and wise ancestors. And as I research and practice in my own way these seasonal rituals that my forebears observed across Britain and Scandinavia and Eastern Europe, I feel the thread of connection strengthening across generations. I feel connected to the ones that came before me. And so when I light a candle on Beltane morning or gather spring flowers for my home, I'm participating in actions that echo through centuries. There's something like so deeply comforting in knowing that my ancestors marked these same seasonal transitions. They attuned to the same rhythms of the earth that I feel today. And in honoring these traditions, I honor not just the practices themselves, but the wisdom of those who came before me, their understanding of cycles, their reverence for natural transitions, and their recognition of our interdependence with the living world. And I'm not just talking about human beings, our interdependence and in our connection with the natural living world, Mother Nature herself. Now, the wheel of the year serves as a map not only for the changing seasons, but for the inner transformations that we all experience. And as we attune to the shifting energies around us, we develop a greater awareness of the similar cycles within ourselves. Just as the earth experienced periods of dormancy and growth and fullness and release, so too do we move through comparable phases in our emotional, creative, physical, and spiritual lives. Now, Beltane, with its fiery celebration of life's abundance, invites us to recognize what's blooming in us, what sparks of inspiration are catching fire, what relationships are flourishing. By marking these seasonal thresholds intentionally, we create space to acknowledge our own internal weather, to honor our personal transitions, and to align with our inner rhythms with the ancient pulse that connects us to both earth and ancestry. Now, it's been so fun for me to dive into what my ancestors might have done during seasonal shifts. And I have found joy in researching these things. And so I'd be genuinely curious to know what your ancestors would be doing this time of year. Did your family come from regions with unique May Day traditions? And perhaps they wore flower crowns in Eastern Europe, or danced around the village bonfires in Scotland, or celebrated with specific foods that marked this halfway point to summer. So it really is, we're right at that point between spring equinox and summer solstice when we really feel the shift. Like things are blooming. I'm starting to see signs of that. I'm actually going to have blueberries this year. The flowers have fallen off and the fruit has emerged. And that's really exciting to me to see these shifts because I don't know, it just signals the passage of time and and growth, frankly. I really am interested in if you'd be comfortable sharing. I'd love to hear about any ancestral traditions and how they might inform your personal self-care and spiritual practices today. And that's because I just feel like there's something really powerful about creating a tapestry of our collective heritage and finding the common threads that connect us across time and culture. So whatever your background is, um, look into it. What would your people have been doing? And like I mentioned earlier, it's been so fun for me to explore this and realize some of the things that still remain within me that are not that different from the ones that came before me. And um, like mentioning how we've always just had a love of May Day, and I think that's interesting because it's not, quote, a major holiday or anything like that. So it's something though that my family and I've always had been attuned to. So I think that's kind of interesting. So here are some journal prompts for your Beltane reflection. I've just got three prompts. It's not anything too crazy. And they kind of go from number one, the seeds of intention, number two, the passionate purpose, and number three, community connections. So here's your first journal prompt. Maybe mark the time on this episode so that you can find this easily when you have a moment to grab your journal and kind of explore these prompts, and come back to this later, or pause it and go grab your journal now. Here is the first prompt with the theme of seeds of intention. What have you been nurturing since the spring equinox that is now beginning to show signs of growth? How can you tend to these intentions as they develop toward full bloom at the summer solstice? Seeds of intention. This one feels really big to me because right at spring equinox, if you don't know, I'll share it with you now. I had a hysterectomy. I still have my ovaries, so I didn't go into menopause, but it was still a pretty big deal. And now, as we're approaching Beltane, I am feeling like a new woman. I've rested, I've tended, and I've cared for my physical body, my emotional body, my spiritual body, and my mental health. And I'm starting to feel like my vitality growing, and coming back. And I thought it was interesting to have the surgery around the spring equinox, and it kind of tickled me a little bit. I was like, that's a kind of auspicious time. And then I thought, I wonder how I'll feel at Beltane, and I wonder how I'll feel come summer solstice. And to kind of mirror my healing from surgery with the wheel of the year has been really cool. But enough about me. Here's your second journal prompt, the passionate purpose. Beltane represents the fiery energy of creativity and passion. What sparks joy and enthusiasm in your life right now? How might you fan these flames to bring more vitality to your daily exercise? So what's bringing you joy and what are you enthusiastic about? And don't twist it. Don't be like, what can I make myself like doing, or what can I become more enthusiastic about? No, what do you already feel like? This is fun. I like this. This brings me happiness and joy. And I'll give you an example of one of the things that came to me the other day. About once a week, I get to walk with almost everybody in my family, including my four nephews, and they like to come over after the walk and we just like hang out and play. And we just had a simple, big, like red playground ball. And we like made up a game and we were playing with it and we were drawing in the street with sidewalk chalk, and the sun was shining and the wind was blowing, and it was just being in that sort of childlike, playful nature. And I thought, this feels really good to me. More of this. And I've been telling some clients, like, follow the fun and follow your ability or cultivate that playfulness within you, because the world feels really heavy right now for some of us. There's a lot going on, and darn it, I'm just not going to let it rob me of any joy that is naturally and organically wanting to bloom within me, because that sustains me when times are hard and maybe I'm not feeling as joyful. I remember those joyful times. So your second journal prompt is sort of the passionate purpose. Like, what sparks joy and enthusiasm in your life right now? And how can you fan those flames and build that fire and build that passion? Your third journal prompt, community connections. Traditional Beltane celebrations centered around community bonds. So reflect on your connection to others. How do they nourish you? What relationships might benefit from renewed attention and care? And that can include your relationship with yourself, because that has been a big theme for me. I tend to others and to tend to the relationships that are very, very meaningful to me. And I'm not always so good about tending my relationship to myself. And I have had to sort of focus on that. On another note, I've gotten to see some people that I haven't seen in a while lately that have been through some big life stuff. And it was fun to recognize that even though some of these people I cannot talk to or see all the time, the bond remains strong because I write handwritten cards to them, or we send each other love and prayers, and I can feel that even if they haven't specifically told me that they've done that, and our bond remains true, simply because it's just natural and easy to do. So, don't ever take for granted the power of getting out your pen and paper and doing some journaling. Don't be shy about it. And if you write things down and you don't want to ever look at it again or you don't want other people to see it, you can write it down and shred it or set it on fire or tear it up. Although I do think there is something very powerful about going back and reading some of the things that we've written. That's I just think that journaling is an extremely powerful and potent self-care tool. And that's why I always have journal prompts in a tarot spread. And on that note, we're moving into the tarot spread for Beltane or May Day, which is about kindling your inner flame. And it's a 3-card spread to connect with Beltane's sacred fire. So we're working with the fire element on this episode and throughout this season, and I'm loving it. So, how to use this spread. First, I invite you to find a quiet moment, perhaps with a candle lit, to honor Beltane's fiery essence. Now, as you shuffle your cards, visualize the ancient bonfires that once blazed across hilltops, connecting communities and igniting the collective creative spirit. When ready, draw 3 cards and place them in a triangle formation, kind of mimicking the shape of a flame. And if you're doing this, maybe you want to light a candle. Maybe you have a fire pit in the backyard and you want to do this while connecting with a little fire in your yard, or in your fireplace. But however you want to go about it, go about it. And now here we're going to dive into the 3-card spread. And I'm going to also talk to you guys about the cards that I pulled, which I'm going to have to find now. But they really they were pretty big, as I don't know if you guys did the other tarot spread I did at the spring equinox, but I have, let's just say I found a theme with the cards that I pulled, and I'll go over those just to give you some context for how to work with this spread, and we'll get there in a second. But card 1 is the spark. What creative energy is igniting within you at this time? This card reveals the seed of inspiration that the Beltane fires are awakening in your spirit. This might be an artistic impulse, a passionate project, or a relationship that brings vitality to your life. Card 2, the fuel. What nourishes and sustains your inner flame? This card shows the resources, relationships, or practices that will help you maintain your creative fire throughout the coming season. Consider how you might intentionally gather and tend to these supportive elements. Card 3, the transformation. How is this Beltane fire reshaping your inner landscape? This card offers insight into how embracing your creative energy will transform some aspect of your life as you move towards summer's fullness. What old structures might need to burn away to make new room for new growth? As you reflect on the cards that you've pulled, consider that the ancient Beltane fires were both destructive and generative. They clear the way for what is no longer needed while sparking new beginnings. So cool. So your own creative fire functions in much the same way, burning through limitations while illuminating new possibilities. And this definitely came through when I did my pulled cards for myself. Now, remember that working with fire energy requires both passion and tending. How might you honor both the wild, ecstatic aspects of your creativity while also creating sustainable practices to keep your flame alive throughout the coming season? So, just to give a little bit of context for this spread, I'll share with you the cards that I pulled, and I'll tell you what, it was a lot of swords. So many swords, which was the same way for my spring equinox tarot spread. And let me tell you, I've definitely had to work through some sword energy, which is usually around thought and communication and beliefs and the way that we are framing things in our mind and how that's affecting us. And, I would say tarot working with symbolic imagery is so fun for me because it definitely points out our blind spots. And I was like thinking I was not having any blind spots right now. Turns out I was wrong. So, card one, the spark. And this isn't a collective reading or anything like that. This is just to demonstrate how I used this spread because I think that that's really helpful sometimes to have a model. And if you're new to tarot, like this is for you. You don't have to be a tarot expert to use tarot cards. In fact, you don't even really, in my opinion, have to study it all that much. You just look at the card, describe what you're seeing, and I will be modeling that today, and then apply that to yourself. So card one was what creative energy is igniting within you at this time, and I pulled the Two of Swords. So if you're listening to this and not watching the YouTube, I'll describe the card for you. So I used the Smithwaite Tarot deck and I pulled the Two of Swords, and on it there is a woman or a figure draped in white sitting on a concrete bench. They are blindfolded. Their arms are crossed right at their chest, right at their heart center, and they have their swords pointed upwards. So they're kind of making an X. There is a crescent moon in the background, and there's a little bit of water, and the water is kind of slightly rippling, so you can tell that it's not quiet and still. There might be a little wind blowing across it, or maybe it's flowing or rushing water, but it's definitely not still. And the sky is really clear. So the way that I approached this was I just wrote down what I saw. And here's what I wrote. I am sitting in stillness, two swords are in my hands, and I cross my hands over my chest. Each sword points upward, and I am blindfolded. My shoes are yellow, and I sit under a crescent moon. I am attuned and waiting. I I'm giving, but wait, I'm giving oh, I know what I was writing. I have to read my own handwriting for these things, and sometimes it's messy. I'm giving don't bother me energy, is what I meant to say, which is kind of true. It's like, it almost seems like there's a boundary, there's aloneness, there's like no other people on this card, and I think that's important to note. And I feel like I feel protected and turned inward. That's another thing I wrote when I looked at that image. So, what does that mean for this tarot spread? And so I wrote the spark, internal wisdom over external information. My intuition is strengthening. So that's what I feel like is igniting within me. Also, an intellectual awakening or decision point. Creativity comes from exploring my inner world and my inner perspectives. And I feel like it's also through this card I wrote down that I'm synthesizing seemingly opposing ideas, that there's duality and balance, and that creativity is needed to bring harmony and balance to this duality that I'm feeling inside, or that my intuition is. Because when I ever see I blindfold, I feel like I'm not looking and I'm not seeking, I'm waiting and I'm in stillness and I'm in my own energy and my inner landscape. The spark might involve creative expression that helps me to process complex feelings or situations that I've been holding at bay. So that's my card for card one, which represents the spark. Now we're going to go to the fuel. And this one really cracked me up because I have to tell you, when I pulled this card, I was like, I don't understand how this even works with this spread. And this will happen to you when you work with the tarot. Sometimes you'll pull a card and it'll land in a spread and you'll be like, huh? Like, what does that mean? This was one of those. So for the fuel, I've got the Eight of Swords. So on this card, you see a figure that's bound and blindfolded, and they're surrounded by all these swords, but there is an opening. If they can just feel and sense their way through, they can get out of this, quote, cage of swords that's surrounding them. And it looks like they're in kind of maybe swampy or watery ground. So I was like, oh my gosh, what does this mean for the fuel for me? So, and this would represent what nourishes and sustains my inner flame. And here's how I kind of entered into this by first describing the card. I am wrapped and bound, my eyes are closed, and I am in the damp soil. Swords are embedded all around me, but there is an opening. I will need to feel and sense my way forward. So I feel like what will sustain my inner flame is continuing to lean into my feeling and sensing self over my own overly analytical or thinking self. I am a very process oriented, analytical person, believe it or not, even though I totally have a job where, my intuition leads the way. Um, I kind of have both, and sometimes they're at war with each other. So there's a duality there, which is sort of represented by my first card, the Two of Swords. So I wrote that what nourishes and sustains my inner flame is feeling and sensing my path rather than looking around and analyzing the external environment and circumstances. So I need to do more feeling and less analyzing. I also feel that vulnerability will, allowing myself to be more vulnerable, will nourish my inner flame. And working through feelings of restriction or limitation will become important. And I noted that the two cards I had pulled so far had a blindfold, making me feel like my flame likes my intuitive self and my less predictable self. So that's kind of where I'm leaning, and I definitely have more journaling that I did around that, but I won't bore you with all those details. The third and final card is about the transformation. And this is where I noticed, at least with my cards, a big shift. Um, so the transformation is how Beltane is transforming me, and I got the Ace of Cups. So it's not a sword. It's actually really, really different. So on this card, you see a hand coming from a cloud. You see it holding a golden cup that's overflowing with water, and it pours into a still pond with lotus blossoms or lily pads in there. There's a white bird sort of dropping a circle into the cup. It makes me almost feel like a communion is occurring. So I wrote that how Beltane is transforming me is emotional, new beginnings, renewal and awakening, a new phase of emotional and spiritual life, a fresh way of connecting with feelings and my intuition. So, it was interesting to get those two sword cards at the beginning because I do feel really connected to my intuition a lot of the time. But this was just an invitation to say you can go even further, you can deepen that practice. And for me to step back and think about how am I really moving through the world as intuitively and with my feelings and sensing self as much as I'm being called to. And I think one of the things I had to realize was I'm not. I feel like this Beltane is transforming within me my capacity for love and compassion. I feel like creative inspiration is going to flow freely from emotional sources. So maybe being more connected to my emotional self. And greater emotional authenticity await me and greater self-expression and a way to be able to honor my feelings on a deeper, deeper level, which I feel like is one of the things that I'm going to probably be working on forever. And if you use these journal prompts and do these tarot spreads, you're going to find that there will be themes that come up for you too. That's to be expected. And it's nothing to be like upset about or like, oh, here we go again. It's an invitation. It's saying there's something here for you. Something more to learn, and every one of us has sort of those sets of things. Well, I feel like we've covered a lot. I hope you enjoyed it or I found it at least interesting. Don't forget to get those journals out, get those tarot cards out. Take some time for you to explore who you are and what you want and how you can honor your inner fire and your flame around this time of Beltane or May Day. And remember that all of us have different entry points for certain spiritual practices and ideas. And the intention is that we ask ourselves why we have them, where they came from, and if they're serving us well. And one of the things that I've found is that honoring nature and nature's rhythms is never going to not serve us well. It's what nourishes and sustains us. There was a time when we were in much closer kinship to the land and to the cycles of the natural world, and it's kind of a radical act to embrace that more today, probably more now than ever. And it's just a wonderful self-care and spiritual practice. So that's what Blooming Wand is about. That's what I'm inviting myself to do and you to do. And I'm so glad that you're here. And don't forget, you can find me at bloomingwand.com. You can sign up for my newsletter there, get access to Substack, podcast, YouTube channel, all the yummy things. I have a mentorship program that I am enrolling a couple of more people in. That will be great. If you're interested, reach out. There's an application process. And as always, take good care of yourselves, and I'll see you soon.